Back in June of 2016, Tony Vitello, the current Tennessee baseball head coach, did an interview. For where? Not Tennessee. He interviewed for the head coaching job at the University of Missouri. Now, this is a little bit important to me because I like baseball. I'm a baseball player, and I love Mizzou. So, it all comes together. Now, I'll tell you a little bit about Tony Vitello. Tony Vitello was a great coach. He coached at Arkansas, helped them become a nationally recognized program, and now he's at Tennessee and won a national championship with the University of Tennessee in 2023. Man, what could have been for the University of Missouri for their baseball team? Now, let's get into today's quote. You don't understand. I could have had class. I could have been a contender. I could have been somebody instead of a bum, which is what I am. That's a quote from Terry Malloy from the movie On the Waterfront. And just for a little bit of context, he was an up-and-coming boxer before that, but then he was told to throw a game from a mob boss, which if anyone was told to throw a game, or in this case a fight from a mob boss, I think they'd do it. I'm not risking it. But let me tell you what I interpret today's quote as. I'm going to tell you why you should interpret it as well. Today, the interpretation for today's quote is what could have been. Now, I agree with this quote. Now, you may think, how can you agree with a quote like that? And now I'll tell you how. Because a quote may just be a statement, but even though it's just a statement and then there's not a truth or a fallacy with it, you can still agree with what is said. Because we have all probably been in a place like this, thinking about what could have been. And I'm going to prove that with my two contentions, sports and death. If you ain't first, you're last. That's a quote from Talladega Nights. That's what Ricky Bobby's dad, just in case you didn't know. That's what he told the Ricky Bobby. And he would later on refute this claim, but that's not important. Because whenever I think of what could have been in sports, I think of the 1919 Black Sox. That is what they are known as today. But if you asked a random person on the street, it would just be the year of 1919. Chicago White Sox. Why do I call them the Black Sox? Well, because in the baseball community, that's what they are called. That year, it is alleged that the players on the White Sox threw the World Series for some money. Because back then, players weren't paid very well. Now, so they went to the nearest place to just place the bet. Place the bet, but not on themselves. So they threw the World Series, and this ended up hurting a well-known baseball player, Shoeless Joe Jackson. What could have been to Shoeless Joe Jackson's legacy if this World Series was not taken away from him? And it has been proven that he wasn't even involved. But what could have been? He could have had a World Series title, and he could have been in the Hall of Fame. He would have been in the Hall of Fame, and that is recognized across the baseball community. That this guy would have been a Hall of Famer. But because of his teammates throwing the World Series, he got clumped in with them. And that's just the sad truth of it. Death by association in this case. Now, it wasn't Shoeless Joe Jackson's fault. But let me bring up another baseball athlete. Pete Rose. What could have been with Pete Rose? Pete Rose is known as the baseball player who has the most hits all time. That's just kind of what he's known as. But then he's also known as the person who bet on his team to win. But now, hold on. He did that whenever he was a manager, not a player, a manager. So he's kicked out of the Hall of Fame for both a manager and a player for something he only did as a manager? That's just not fair. What could have been to his legacy if you add Pete Rose, most hits all time, Hall of Famer. But it's sad because he'll never get to live to that day. Pete Rose died this day. Today, on September 30th. He passed away. 2024. It's a tragedy. Because he won't ever get to see himself in the Hall of Fame. A place that he belongs? It's not right. Now, what could have been for Shoeless Joe Jackson? Because he was death by association, and Pete Rose because he bet on himself? No. His team. Whenever he was a manager, and he gets screwed over as a player? That's just not right. Now, 50 Cent once said, life is hard, so death's gotta be easy. So, when it comes to my second attention, death, I really think of some historical figures. And one of my favorite historical figures, I don't know why I just did, because I love ancient Rome, is Julius Caesar. Now, Julius Caesar was stabbed so many times, and he was killed, and his final words are so rooted deep in history. Et tu, Brute? If you say that to someone, they might actually know what you're saying. His words are that famous. His final words are so well known and famous that they are so recognizable. You could walk up to a stranger, say that, and they might actually know what you're talking about. You don't even have to be a history nerd. Now, Julius Caesar, his death was the changing of tides in history. What could have been if Julius Caesar didn't get killed from his friends? Rome would have probably become a massive powerhouse of a country and might not have fallen 40 years later. From the barbarians, from the Germanic tribes, a place that he had conquered it and taken control of. Man, he would have been rolling in his grave. I'm telling you that, he definitely was. Now, another person when it comes to death, I kind of think of John Wick. Now, I started today off with the movie and what could have been. Something fictional. Now, John Wick is fictional. And how does this have to do anything with history? Now, movies is history. I don't think there's any refuting that. So John Wick is technically a piece of history, whether it is fact or fiction. Now, John Wick, he died in the fourth and final installment of the John Wick franchise. Now, they're making more movies about the John Wick franchise, but they're not about John Wick anymore because he's dead. Now, what does John Wick have to do anything with death other than the fact that he died? And what could have been? Well, what could have been if in the second movie he did not kill the concierge on continental grounds? Well, what could have been is that he wouldn't have been running for his life, probably would have had a peaceful life, and he probably could have just waited for the concierge to leave and then immediately kill him there. Now, John Wick, sadly, his emotions got the best of him and he killed him in the Continental, which is against the grounds of the High Council. So the High Council went after him. They ended up killing him, which is very sad. But he ended up getting his fair share of hits in as well. Now, what does death have to do with what could have been? I just told you that Julius Caesar could have probably taken over the world. He could have taken over the world if his friends didn't kill him. And John Wick would have been a free man if he didn't kill the concierge. Now, when it comes to today's quote, let's go back. You don't understand. I could have had class. I could have been a contender. I could have been somebody instead of a bum, which is what I am. From Tori Malloy. Now, I just showed you through my main points of sports and death, with my interpretation of what could have been, that you need to agree with today's quote. Let's face it. We don't know what could have been because it didn't happen.